when we were going in the studio to make Pocket Full of Kryptonite, I mean, this is like early '90s, so it was
Yeah.
like, there was still a lot of that. You still had people in the industry that were trying to copy the '80s sound,
Hmm.
but we had moved on. I think most of the and you look at all the artists that actually seemed to do well were the ones that stuck to their guns and did their own thing. And there was sort of a new sound that emerged in the early '90s, that
Absolutely.
was more organic. But I can tell you, like when we went in the studio, like here's a great example. I love telling this story. When we were at the power station in New York City, and we were doing. I remember when we were cutting Two Princes, and you know, they were really trying to get me to play like I had my Brady set up, and
Hmm.
I knew that I wanted to play this Brady piccolo snare on that song, but they were really trying to get me to play a really big deep Ludwig,
Mm.
and they wanted to have this massive room sound. They were sort of still sort of going after that '80s thing, just sort of. I think a lot of people think, well, this is what you're supposed to do. These were, if you look at the hit songs, and we were like, no, we don't want to do that. It's not, we have our own sound, and like
Hmm.
I have my own sound and it's part of the band sound. And I stuck to my guns and the band members, Chris and Eric and Mark, everybody stuck with me. And we spent and this was still when people were spending like 5 hours on a snare sound,
Yeah.
It
Right.
was that
Yeah.
world still existed. It doesn't really exist anymore. People realize like, if you can't get a drum to sound good pretty quick, then there's something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back then, people would spend all day on drum sounds.
Hmm.
And so we literally spent a good part of the day, on this snare drum shit. And finally we won. And we
That's
got our
awesome.
way, and it's a good thing we did, or who
Yeah.
knows, I mean, I can't really imagine Two Princes with a big, deep, gated Ludwig snare.
Oh yeah.
But and even when we were mixing, I remember it was sort of like this push pull between like, and I don't want to name any names, and like everybody, the producers and the engineers on that record, I am so grateful for them because ultimately, the sound that we got on that record is so great, and
Hmm.
people always comment on how much they like my drum sound, and I love
They're
the drum sound.
huge. They're
They're great.
huge.
It's a
Yeah.
good balance between sort of this big sound with a lot of room, but there's also an organic quality, and you can hear all the
Yes.
growth notes. But like it was sort of a collaboration between like the producers and engineers really they would always crank the room and the reverb real high, and then I would come over and I'd turn it down. If I had my way, it would have been really dry, and if they had their way, it would have been really wet. But ultimately, between sort of the I don't want to say fighting, but between our disagreement of what they wanted and what I wanted, where we ended up was just perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I
I'm really
agree.
grateful. I'm really grateful to that. But had we sort of listened to what really all along with us from the sound to the sort of decision making with touring and career moves, had we listened to the record company, that we would have not gotten anywhere. Like
Right.
we really stuck to our. I don't think a lot of people realize that about us. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, the Spin Doctors, you have a big hit, people are like, "Oh, they sold out," or they were like,
Right.
whatever. It's just the
Right.
easy, that's sort of the obvious thing to say.
Yeah.
But the truth is, like, we really, really were a band that like stuck to our guns. We were like a real self-made machine. We worked really hard, and had we listened to what they wanted us to do, that record would have never ever taken off because
Yeah.
they wanted us to come home off the road, and they didn't. They really didn't believe in the record. Like a year in, we were doing very well, just based on our own touring, and I'll never forget the record company. We had a meeting, and they were like, "Okay, you guys really don't have any image. You need some tattoos.
Mm.
There's no hits on this record. Um, it's not happening. The record's dead. Um, Come back and make another record." And we were like, I got to tell you, I mean, we're actually out there in our van, and we're like packing clubs around the country. We're making money, no thanks to you guys at all. We're not taking any of your money. We're a self-made machine. We're feeling this buzz out there. Maybe you should consider like helping us a little bit with some promo, and maybe why not like release Jimmy Olsen Blues or Little Miss Can't or Two Princes. They're like, nah, nah, nah. So we decided between amongst ourselves and our manager that we were going to just go back on the road, and we felt like some spark. Things were moving,
Hmm.
regardless of whether the record was a hit or not. things were really growing and building. We didn't want to like sort of kill that momentum at the time. And we did that, and then ultimately some radio picked up our music on their own, and then Epics shortly thereafter decided to go for it, and then the thing really blew up. But
Yeah.
it's sort of like I think it. And I'm telling this. I've told this story a lot, but I like to tell it because I think it's just important for whatever you're doing, whether you're in a band or you're a solo artist or you're just a musician. You know, it's important to like stick to your own guns, develop your own style. Don't feel that you have to follow the trends and be like everybody else, because that rarely gets you anywhere. I think that's the rabbit hole that I've just seen so many people go down. I saw so many bands go down that rabbit hole in the '90s
Yeah.
trying to be grunge. Like everybody was like, one minute you're one thing, and the next minute you're trying to do what's popular, and it rarely works.